are you, and what is your main area of practice or discipline?
Well, I'm Grant Shilling. My main area in practice and discipline is life and life itself. I'd say I've been involved very much in the art of living. I like making shit happen and making my life interesting and seeing everything really as art. Everything is art and everything is political, as Ai Weiwei says. And the other quote I would use is, if I can't dance, I don't want to be part of your revolution, which is Emma Goldman. So I've just basically been dancing and arting most of my life.
Okay, what is unique about your practice and the way that you approach life and the art of life?
Someone once asked me what school of art am I, and I said the stupid school of art, because I like to explore what I don't know about. If you only explored what you knew about, you wouldn't know a whole lot. You'd only know what you know. So I enjoy going into realms that I don't know about and fully exploring them. I'm someone with a physical education degree. I'm a phys ed guy, right? And a long time ago, I saw the link between athletics, arts, and activism, and saw that you could move people more through mass spectacle. And I think if there's one through line through my life, it's trying to pull as many people in through as many different lenses as possible, and just cross-pollinating a lot of things. I was hip-hop before there was hip-hop, baby.
Oh, yeah. Are there any big projects or ideas that you're working on making come to life right now?
Kind of, it's an ongoing story of my work with the folks in Ahousaht, where we were involved in building a skate park. I'd say that Ahousaht really, if we're talking seriously for a minute, as I just said, arts, athletics, and activism have always been linked for me. I'd say if I would find one top moment of that all coming together, is in building a skate park in Ahousaht. So I was involved in building a skate park in Ahousaht, involved building a relationship with the people of Ahousaht, and now, as part of that, we're sending a young man named Swan Campbell down to the All Nations Skate Jam in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and maybe some other folks will be joining us. That's what I'm currently focused on, and for my sins, the Canada Council gave me a 2-year grant to write a book based on all these experiences of building the skate park, of being involved in Ahousaht, and going down to Albuquerque is hopefully the culmination of that. So the book, theoretically, is to be called Full 360, A Story of Survival in a Skate Park. And that's my ongoing cross to bear that I have to write. It's something I have to produce. And I'd say that if there's one other thing about the arts that I've learned, is it's great to have deadlines, goals, gigs, whatever, to make you actually shit it out and get it done. Otherwise, it's talk minus action.
How did you find your place and just yourself being in this specific community here in the Comox Valley? How did that come to be in relation to your background?
The mother of my child and I were living on the Gulf Islands for close to 10 years. We were at the Gulf Island Film and Television School for 5 years, associated with that, and then on Salt Spring Island for 5 years, where my son was born. Salt Spring Island, beautiful people, beautiful thoughts, lots of money. And we knew that we would never be able to afford a place on beautiful Salt Spring Island. And Mary, Levon's mother, and I used to put out a newspaper called The Gig, the Gulf Islands Gazette, which we called the storytelling medium. And I used to go up as far as Cortez and Quadra, and would come back in the mighty Econoline van and park in Cumberland. Would usually have a good time, gale time at the Waverly, and crash out in my van and wake up in Cumberland and go, this place is awesome. And this is like before it became the bomb, the shit, the whatever. As is the case with a lot of people who live on the margins, whether they be artists, whatever. Most of the artists I know are starving artists. There's a reason for that phrase. Mary and I would both consider ourselves artists, and we were looking to roost because we had a boyo then, and Cumberland was still affordable. And so the combination of all those things brought us to Cumberland. And the first year we were there was the big time out. And we were 2 blocks from where it was happening. And Michael Frante and Spearhead were coming to Cumberland, which was still a total freaking backwater at that point. And we were just like, and that felt like the beginning of a tidal change for Cumberland. Yeah, and we volunteered for that, and we just immediately felt immersed in the place that we wanted to be. Now I'm not so sure. It's just become a bit too bougie for this guy. But
it is, yeah. It is not the Cumberland it once was. There's definitely a lot of old school Cumberland people still hiding out there, and I'm really hoping this summertime you kind of feel that come out a bit more again for some of the music and stuff that happened.
You grew up there, right?
I did. I was born on Camp Road, so born and raised. Yeah, I left Cumberland just a couple years ago, so I'm really trying to make myself go back there, even though it's not the community I know and grew up with, and sort of make sure that these cool stories aren't getting lost, basically. And that's a big reason why I wanted to take part in this project. A lot of artists that maybe I didn't know personally, but faces and people I saw at festivals and events, and I know they've got a story.
How did growing up in Cumberland form your art?
I think it really formed my art, to be quite honest. There's so much poverty and substance abuse in my community, but I found role models through art and the arts community. So I was able to separate, like, you know, how do I want my lifestyle to be? I want to be creative and happy the way that these amazing people are creative and happy, but I want to leave behind those parts that are difficult, the trauma that people carry with them. And, you know, while some people ended up in Cumberland for cool reasons, some wanting to end a lot of generational pain, not just in my own family, but in kind of the family of Cumberland. So I think that's a big reason why I am so passionate about working as an artist and kind of building an audience to tell my story in that way.
So do you think some of your stories then are informed by growing up in Cumberland and what?
Absolutely. In Cumberland and the Comox Valley as a whole, I think that was just such a big part of my story, and what I search for is just my upbringing in this community, and how really, if it weren't for the arts and just in general for the togetherness of the community, I don't think it would be such a healthy place to be quite honest. As beautiful as it is here, because there really is a lot of issues with substance abuse in this community, and I saw that everywhere, and I still see it, but the light that shines through that to me is the incredible things that still people come out on the other side with. Is these really cool events and music and visual art and projects like this. So
do you think Cumberland's reached a tipping point in terms of Bohemia versus it becoming too suburban?
I think it's getting there, but I think a lot of people are going to stay put and aren't going to leave. We sold our house, so I kind of wish we stayed, but I think it's getting to a tipping point. But I think newcomers do recognize that this didn't come out of nowhere and that this has been here for a while. And I think keeping, creators present in Cumberland and continuing to keep them involved in things like Big Time Out, which was then Atmosphere, which is now Cumberland Wild, and whatever it will be, and making sure that those names and faces are up there will help kind of keep us on the right track of, sure, come on in, but let's support our families that have been here from the start and try to keep it Cumberland. Cumberland's awesome at its core. I think also giving recognition to the Forest Society, the Cumberland Forest, those people that kept it so beautiful, and here we are, and it totally paid off in some ways. So
yeah, I always said that it was interesting that Cumberland had because when I moved there it was still pretty rough around the edges, and but yeah. the Forest Society was already inscribed there, and I thought, this is not like a lot of bourgeois wealthy areas that people have surplus money to do things like buy the forest. This is coming from people that don't have a lot of bucks, and they're still made it a value to save the forest. So I thought that was pretty remarkable.
So do you do this full time? And if not, how much of your time do you spend on these projects?
Well, like I said, I honestly do see it was pretty sweet. I had a dear friend, Oraf Orafson, who's a photographer from Vancouver, who's world's largest and most notorious homosexual, who was a big mentor in my early 80s. And he recently printed a photo of me online, and it said "The Art of Living." And I thought, thank you, right? And it was kind of a nod to the fact that my day job is a homeless outreach worker. And through doing that, I've encompassed things like I had an event here at the Comox Valley Art Gallery called But Enough Art Eat, which we're bringing again in September, which is about writing, cooking, drawing, etc. workshops for the free range people. And I started a homeless street soccer team. Have done a variety of things where I consider, I see Ai Weiwei, who's a Chinese dissident artist, as probably someone that I look up to, because he just rolls the fabric of life into everything you do, and somehow you see it as art. And what's art? Art to me is anything done well, anything done with heart and soul. It's not paintings of horses on a canvas.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a transformational experience, a thrust moment, or a biggest triumph, trauma, or hurdle that kind of sent you into that level of focus that you're in now? Or if it was more gradual, could you walk us through that a little bit?
I just came from the Powell River Film Festival, where my brother is the executive director of the film festival there. Mm-hmm. And he was a big influence on my life, but he was also, in a way, an impediment. Gary was the artist, and I was the athlete. And somehow the twain weren't supposed to meet.
Right.
And like a lot of people, I read Jack Kerouac when I was really young, and I read On the Road. And I found out that Jack Kerouac, who wrote this novel at a time that I loved, was also had a football scholarship to Columbia University. And it's like, you can be two people in one. So I'd say that was the beginning of a light going on. It's like, I can be, as Walt Whitman says, am I not so vast as to contain multitudes? It's like, so through having a brother who was an influence that I looked up to, and also recognizing who I was, and then marrying the two, like marrying all of these things, and I'm Jewish, and I grew up in a Toronto that's not the fabulously multicultural city that it is today, and it seemed like dirty went with Jew all the time, and I recognized it a lot, and so as others, that a lot of my identity is I don't take any guff, and I don't expect people to, I don't really care what people think. So, you combine all of those things, and it sort of steeled my determination to look inside and decide what I'm going to project outside, and damn the torpedoes.
Is there any advice you would give to youth in the Comox Valley and just around the world as far as seeking resources and getting rolling on their own journey?
The best way to get rolling is just get rolling. It's like whatever that impulse is inside you, and you do have one, just act on it and just do, and don't worry about, it's a different age now. When I started out, to me, art was in opposition to the dominant paradigm, and not, like I said, most of my friends were starving artists, and not tied to the Instagram double wham, this is my brand times that we live in now. And I think there's a greater onus, a greater commodified, consumer, capitalistic, whatever, dollar brand desire. And I'd say forget that shit. Like just do what you want to do. Like there's nothing more freeing than freedom. And to me, art is just like, it's free space. So if you're worried about market, or selling your stuff, I think, and this is my own personal opinion, I think you might be missing part of the point. The point is that art equals freedom.
And what are you most proud of?
I'm most proud of my son and my relationship to him. I'm a full-time single father, and whatever I've said to this point, and however that reflects on him and whatever he absorbs from that, that's my work. Everything else is secondary.
How old is your son now?
18.
18.
Yeah.
What do you think is the toughest part and the most rewarding part of moving through the world as an artist or a creator?
You know, I think it's a choice. I think probably the toughest part is just making that choice and just kind of dealing with what? You're not going to be a doctor or a lawyer, or you're going to be an artist? What was the other part of the question?
The most rewarding part.
The most rewarding part is the process. To me, art is all about process, not product. It's about the people you engage with. It's about being in your head and getting that high of figuring esoteric shit out. So enjoy the process, enjoy the ride.
Is there anything specifically in the Comox Valley that you think should be a bit more nurtured in our arts community that we're lacking, that maybe the public can just give a bit more attention or light to?
I think there's a variety of things. You know, obviously, we're living in this era of so-called reconciliation. And I would say, you know, if I were to flip the script to earlier, one of the happiest things I did in the Comox Valley, as I recall it now, and I'll probably get around to answering your question, I was approached by a notorious promoter here in the Comox Valley who wanted to bring a tribe called Red to Aboriginal Days, as it was known then, to KFN, Comox First Nation, and did I have any ideas? So I called up my friend Mikey at Land Yachts and said, hey, he needs a certain number of K to bring Tribe Called Red. And Mike just stepped right up. And I said, but my ask was we get to build a half pipe at the same time for Aboriginal Days. I was engaged talking with Charlene Everson from KFN, and she said their biggest challenge was bringing youth into the Aboriginal Days. And that day, they had like their biggest turnout ever. So to answer your question in a long-winded way is involve the Indigenous youth, involve youth, get youth interested in art at a really early age. And I'm not saying that we're not doing that, but I would say that would be make it a value. And no masters, don't be studying Picasso and Jay-Z and whatever. Study you and Aubrey and everyone else and just influence each other. Like everyone who's part of a scene, they're so-called nobody at the time. And so create your scenes, encourage that. Parents, step away from the children while they're doing this, you know, and make it happen with the youth, and the rest will follow.
Is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to, or anyone that you think has kind of influenced you along your way? And if not, anyone you like to acknowledge?
First of all, I'd like to give a shout out to my dear departed friend, George Sawchuk. George had what I call the Forest Gallery that other people call something else in Fanny Bay, which was 4 acres of a wooded forest lot in Fanny Bay. George had worked his whole life. He had no interest in commodification or commercialism. He made beautiful art. He had no desire to sell it. He used to say, I'll prostitute my back and my body, but I won't prostitute my mind or my soul. And George was a huge influence on me, and he was a father figure, a grandfather figure, and he was a father figure, a grandfather figure to my son for sure. So I'd like just to remember George. I'd also probably like to give a shout out to Andy Everson and his unique vision of blending traditional Indigenous art with, in some cases, because he does a variety of things, but with things like Star Wars and all that, and merging the two. And I'd like to give a shout out to all the young women who are like coming up in a very interesting time to be a young woman, and I think are going to be the future is female.
And is there anything else you'd like to add?
Thank you very much. I wish I would have engaged you more, Chai. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think I'm all right, but I've just got to say thank you for allowing us to take a peek into your creative process, and we really appreciate your time and energy, and we're super happy to share your work with the world.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.